What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome to the RDL show. I am your host, Ryan D. Leaf. I will be joined by Sky Guasco and Jonathan Rifkin here shortly. Charlie Moss, who is a college student, has something called finals or something to do, and then he's got to go home. So maybe he just is starting his own show. Who knows? But he'll be out for the week. We'll welcome him back, unless he's just tired of taking the Louisville Slugger, the bat, every single round. Draft weekend. We talked a little bit about my story in the draft and what it meant, but I thought we heard some stories over the weekend. Some of the calls as they're recorded have been released, and I think they tell even a bigger story in terms of what this day means to these young men who are being drafted into the NFL. I think for a large part of the people who are watching, who are so invested in their teams, they forget and take for granted how difficult it is to get to this place. The amount of hard work and sacrifice, and then the odds on that you will not make it. When people talk about the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, it's actually less than that. It is You have more chance of being struck by lightning when you buy the winning lottery ticket, it feels like, than you will be of being drafted into the NFL draft. Okay. So there is a realistic expectation that each and every one of the 259 players that were drafted over the weekend can all make the claim that we were not supposed to be here anyway. So this is just gravy for us. And you could hear that in a lot of those phone calls when a team called and said you were about to be a Dallas Cowboy, you're about to be a Arizona Cardinal. All of those things played out in real time for us. And I don't know why this year in particular I heard the voices much more clearly. Maybe because of the place that I'm in personally, where I've had to reflect on being told for so long how poor of a football player I was, and never could look at, how great of a football player I was, rather, and how hard it was to get to where I was at and to be drafted second overall. Those types of things. So maybe I was just more ready to accept and hear from others this weekend and listen to those stories. Listen to those stories about the sacrifice that mom and dad had made. To listen to Kwity Paye and the story that he laid out. And the moment he was drafted saying, Mom, you don't have to do anything anymore. You did so much to get me here. Those types of stories. Najee Harris grew up and spent many a night in a homeless shelter, homeless facility, and he held his draft night party there. When he was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round, he got to celebrate with all those individuals and children in the homeless shelter that he grew up in, showing them that, hey, it doesn't matter the circumstance. It's tough. You've been dealt a tough hand, but you can, if you choose to work hard and overcome, get to a place like he did. Those stories for me were more impactful than anything that the NFL did. I was happy that they showcased some of them, but really it wasn't them. It was outside content that really showcased the stories. I don't spend much time watching the NFL draft. It's a spectacle. It's a produced TV show with everything they do. The most I watched of it was really doing the live show Thursday night with Sky and Jonathan, and it was that, and even that was muted, right? I watched it, but I understand how difficult it is to get to this place where you're about to get your name called, and the emotions that drive you once they are. So it was really special. I think it was a testament to our show and what we talk about, how you can accomplish anything you put your mind to if you choose a positive and healthy direction when you hit that fork in the road. It always is. And the NFL draft is a very good example of that. And sometimes I forget, when you're beat over the head for so long about how poor of a football player you were and the word bust, you get to a place where either you stop listening and stop allowing how other people see you, how you live your life. I think that's a huge step, right? I think that happens a lot, especially in relationships and things like that. How people see you ultimately is how you see yourself sometimes if you allow it in. And I think for the longest time, that was exactly where I was at, because there are going to be guys that only play for a year or 2 years who were drafted this weekend. And not for one moment will their careers be a failure or unsuccessful, no matter how hard fans or protractors put that on them. All right. Their sacrifice and everything to get to where they were at is worth it. And it's important to remember that, because we'll all feel like we didn't make it. The transition from being a professional athlete to civilian life is never easy, because we've felt like we've done this important thing and it's the thing we are. And how can we be anything else when we move on from there? That's got to be incredibly difficult. And it is. The transition from that is incredibly difficult. And it doesn't help when people are piling on saying you weren't successful when you were the most successful at what you did. The absolute cream of the crop, best ever to do it. You're in that conversation. If you are drafted into the NFL draft, there are 259 of you. How many players right now are suiting up, getting ready to head into workouts, I don't know, in Pop Warner, in high school football? You add all those numbers up and watch them break down every year. It gets lower and lower and lower and lower and lower until this weekend plays out, where 259 names were called. That is it. 259 names. That's how special this is. And every single one of those drafted players this weekend is the best of the best. Whether their career, in the eyes of whoever, see it as a success, they are. And they'll walk away with this as the greatest honor that their sporting life can achieve. Now, some will win Super Bowls, some will build legacies, whatever. But this weekend was special. It starts over now, but it was a really special thing. And it was fun to see some of those stories told and really have almost the palpable feeling around that, and feeling successful in everything I've done and everything these young men do. So that was fun. Let's welcome in Sky and Jonathan now. What did you guys think of the draft? You guys have seen it for years. You guys watch it more. Sky and I were talking about a pre-show about he kind of asked what I thought about the draft and the spectacle of it and everything. I don't pay too much attention to it. I pay attention to the storylines. But what did you guys think of the draft? As a host city, Cleveland, that wasn't something that I thought about. 2 years ago when Nashville broke the record for people in attendance, I said, that's just Nashville. I mean, people will go to a gun show with that many people in Nashville. So it's didn't play too much into it for me. It's a popular sport. The reason why the NFL is so popular, and it's the reason why guys get paid so much money, is because of the TV revenue and everybody's eyeballs are on it.
I think that the RDL show ruined the draft for me, Ryan, because I used to watch it from a fan perspective and be like, oh, this is so cool. Look how happy these wide-eyed, hopeful young men are. They get to hug the commissioner, the guy that they've wanted to meet for so long. They get to hear their name called. And then we go to the here comes the RDL show. Nah, it's a gimmick. And as I think more critically about it, the less I like it, because you're right, like that's the truth of the matter. And so as I look more into it from an analyst perspective rather than a fan perspective, I enjoy it less and less. What I enjoy about it is recognizing the work that we put in on our end to get to that point, right? Like I enjoy the theatrics to an extent. I enjoy the hope and the reverence that these picks display and the vibe that they protrude during that time. Like it's awesome to witness that from the outside looking in. But at the same time, when you think critically about it and you see the theatrics that go into it, and then you also sit there and it takes 15 minutes. It shouldn't take 15 minutes and 4 commercial breaks. And then they stall. Matt Berry, literally had no idea what to say. For these like fluff moments of the draft, they would just go Rich Eisen too. There were times when he got caught up because you could hear the producer in his ear saying, "Nope, stall, stall, stall. We got to hold the content before we get to the pick." And it's like, no, you don't. We just want to know who got picked. And
4 hours and 15 minutes was the first round, by the way.
Yep. Too long. We even talked about on Thursday. We were an hour in, and we were at pick 8. And Ryan's like, "Okay, we're going to pick 10. This is ridiculous." And that was an hour and a half.
I know.
It took an hour and a half to get.
I tried. I went to bed at 7:45 last night, boys. So I mean, it's like, I forget. You have to remember, I'm going to be 45 years old, and I had to be up for a workout at 6 a.m. So you pick your spots. And watching the NFL draft for me for 4.5 hours, I'm just like, yeah, ESPN app, hook me up in the morning. Let me see who got drafted.
That's exactly what it is. It's like I'm gonna go and do other things and just follow it on my phone at this point, because that the players getting drafted is what's meaningful for me, not the theatrics that go into it. And that's what I've learned through the process of being part of the RDL show and looking at it from that perspective. So I enjoy it for the names being called. I no longer enjoy it for the theatrics that are put in place.
Yeah, I had it on. I mean, obviously, round one we did together, and I continued that as well after we got off. It is interesting because round one does take so long, and it almost takes there's so much excitement and future put into this. Like Trevor Lawrence, we've known for months, even Zach Wilson, but it really came down to the 49ers and then the Falcons and the Bengals and the Dolphins, and see how that turns. After the first 15, maybe 20 picks, I kind of lose interest because now I'm starting to think like, well, most of these guys now aren't going to be immediate impact players at this point, so we won't even hear their name until week 6 or next year, and I kind of lose interest after that point. On the other side, I had the draft all the way through round 7 in the background, kind of in my house over the weekend, tuning in and paying attention to certain teams and certain slots and players and stuff. And actually, I had more enjoyment watching day 2 and 3 because picks were coming in constantly. Somebody was on the clock, the pick was in, the pick was told. Someone was on the clock, pick was in, pick was told. And so we were raffling through names, and I could, if I didn't know a player or wasn't aware of the situation, didn't matter. Someone was right behind them, and they were constantly talking about players, and then it became an actual something to enjoy watching. I've never been to a draft. If you were to go to a draft, it might be a completely different energy. I would like to attend one someday just because. But after pick 3 for me, because I'm a Niners guy, after pick 3, as a Niners fan and having the Trey Lance to go down and everything else was kind of a blur in day one. But Ryan, you're right. I agree with Jonathan. It's been really eye-opening to have this show with you and have the different perspectives. Because you're a former player, you've literally been there all the way down the line, and your perspectives are so on point. And it's been really refreshing, really, to see your insight. And then watching
baseball figured it out. Baseball is the only sport that I think has really figured out that nobody really like. The only thing that people care about are the names that their team is picking.
But I mean, people do care because a ton of people watch it and a ton of people show up to go to it. Like Sky, I get it. Like you're sports. I have such a different perspective on this stuff because I wasn't a. Of course, I was a fan when I was a kid. I loved the Pittsburgh Steelers, but then it became a chase for me to get there and accomplish that. So I wasn't thinking about like being there as a fan or seeing it from that angle. So now my perspective is skewed, and it probably has made it problematic for how I'm going to raise MacGyver, just because I'm like I see it differently, and I don't want to. I feel a little bad now because you guys are like, fuck that shit now. I'm just gonna enjoy what I'm.
Good though.
And
because I think that
is it like did I pull back the curtain? Am I the Wizard of
No,
Oz?
but that's the thing is the truth is which side do you want to be on, right? As an individual, do you want to be on the ignorance is bliss side, where you're going to pay attention to the theatrics and get lost in it all, or do you feel like knowledge is power? And I feel more secure knowing that the reality behind what's in front of me versus what I choose to see and what's painted by the producers and the directors and the graphics departments and the storylines and like the whole point. The reason that you enjoyed the fluidity of rounds 4 through 7, Sky, was because of like they know that most people aren't watching at this point, so they're not packing in all the content. So rounds 1 and 2, it's just a massive shit show of we have peak viewership, so we're going to pack in as much as we can, because they also sell ad spots probably 3 or 4 times what they're selling it for the later rounds. And so they have to put as many ads in there as possible. It's insane. And so I'd rather in this situation have the knowledge of what's actually going on and be realistic than and I appreciate that perspective, Ryan. So it's not like you ruined it for me. I just appreciate it. Like baseball, it's 35 rounds. They don't make a gimmick out of it. I pay attention to who gets picked, and then I watch how it pans out. And to me, that's just fine. And I don't know, the NBA and the NFL, they don't do that, and they can and they should, in my opinion. I don't know.
We just had a comment there. I want to bring that back up, Sky, about the difference in Major League Baseball and AHL are more. They draft them younger. They send them through minor leagues and things like developmental leagues, where NBA and NFL, these guys that are drafted, of course, can be more quickly impactful on those teams. So that makes it more interesting and stuff. But it's still something you can pay attention to. After pick 15 in the first round, you usually kind of start falling off to the wayside there. All right. So, as you guys can see, I got a little sun this weekend. It was rest and relaxation weekend for me. I have not had one of those in forever. I'm fully vaccinated now, so it was Rumspringa for the Leaf guy. I went down to sign some autographs and got a little too much sun and didn't eat the best. And so this morning, when the green bag from Sunfair came, I was pretty excited, right? Personalized, delivered, healthy meals. Sunfair, this is the way to eat. And I got back on it. And, oh, God, this morning's breakfast were paleo pancakes, guys. That's the ship. I feel like this morning, see the picture of me on the bottom there? I felt like that in the mirror this morning. I really did. After a weekend of, I didn't overindulge, but, I mean, I ate. Like consecutive mornings, I had like really cinnamon spiced French toast with syrup. So I was definitely indulging. So I got back on it this morning. Today's meals, right? Paleo pancakes, and then I got a pistachio nut bar for the snack. Lunch is a ground turkey burger, and dinner is a chipotle steak salad. Oh, it's a wonderful day to get back on it. About 2,200 calories. You guys can see the ship. Sunfair.com. Go to sunfair.com. Fill out all your information. Click on Carl Farrell as your sales representative. And, of course, you also click on the RDL show on where you heard about it, and you'll get 10% off your first delivery. This food is delivered to your front door every single morning. Fresh, wonderful food that you can really help transition and change your body. It's about what you eat. Sunfair.com. Here in the Los Angeles and Phoenix areas is where you can go to for that. Take a look on our website as well. The big news, no matter what, the draft and everything else, it was Aaron Rodgers. This Aaron Rodgers stuff, the Kentucky Derby went on. Aaron was there, refused to speak to Mike Tirico on air about the situation. It first leaked out Thursday around noon Pacific time about that he thought he was possibly going somewhere else, how disgruntled he was with where they were with the Packers. Kyle Shanahan went on the Eisen show today, talked about how he did reach out to Matt LaFleur in Green Bay and asked about, hey, is this stuff we're hearing, meaningful or anything? And LaFleur said, we're working through it, but there's not enough, tea available for you to make this work. He's the reigning MVP. He's our quarterback. There's just not enough trade value to get in return for somebody like Aaron Rodgers. But we continue to hear that it doesn't matter. Aaron's like, put down an ultimatum. Either the front office guy goes or I go. And seemingly the question of the day, we forgot to get to that, but the question of the day flat out is this: will Aaron Rodgers play for Green Bay in 2021? I think this goes two ways. One of two ways, all right? He's on the roster, he plays for the Green Bay Packers this year, or he retires. I don't believe there's an organization that has the trade value that will work. I don't believe there's a team out there where he could go where they all of a sudden become a Super Bowl contender like what he has in Green Bay. 2 consecutive NFC championship appearances, reigning MVP. They've added some pieces. Amari Rodgers as a slot receiver in the third round, I thought was a huge value pick for them. I would have liked to see them gone earlier with somebody like Elijah Moore from Ole Miss in the first round rather than Eric Stokes, a cornerback out of Georgia, who some thought was easily down somewhere in the middle or late second round in terms of cornerbacks. Asante Samuel had a much higher grade, I thought.
Did you just say you thought the Packers should have drafted a wide receiver in the first round?
No, I said they should have taken
Elijah
yes.
Moore in the first round.
Oh, yes, I did say
you
that.
Did.
Yes, of course. Well, remember
Very
my philosophy.
particular situation.
Remember, my philosophy feels if there's a
Right.
spot to fill, then I'm okay with it. Like, where did I have Jalen Waddle going in my mock draft? I had him going to Baltimore Ravens at 27. So, this is going to be up to Aaron, ultimately up to Aaron. And he said, and he's told some teammates, like, I'm not going to be back there. I know the guy. I've spent time with him. We've golfed. He is mentally in a place where he's okay with if he would have to walk away from the game. If he had to go off and live in his Malibu beach house with Shailene and have a family and with all his other business opportunities, he would be okay with that. So that has to frighten Green Bay Packers organization as an organization more than anything. I think now he would have to give, if I recall correctly, he'd have to give back $11 million of bonus money, plus he would forfeit $25 million as in his contract for next year. It's $36 million right there that he could just go play and do what he does best for one more year in a place he spent 16 years of his career. That's a lot of cheddar there in Cheesehead land. All right, so I think this is smoke worthy, similar to what Russ Wilson was going through in Seattle. I don't think he goes anywhere. I think ultimately they work it out. We'll see. We'll see how much pull Aaron Rodgers has, because he has more pull than anybody. His agent is Dave Dunn, who was my agent. He does a tremendous job of dialoguing between the team and the player. It always has. And if I'm Dave too, I'm like, hey, it's $36 million, and Dave gets 3% of that. So he's probably working pretty hard to push that forward and move forward. Your guys' thoughts on this whole Aaron Rodgers thing and the fact that it really kind of came to light during draft weekend. I also feel like if a deal didn't get done when you had draft capital before the draft, it's going to be really damn hard to get done after the draft now that this is done.
Yeah, Ryan, I agree 100% all across the board with you. As far as the timing and what Aaron may or may not do because of this. This was the classic though. Like, could you find a better time to drop this landmine on the NFL than 20 minutes before the NFL draft kicks off? I mean, it just took over the draft. There was guys like, Joe Horn, former NFL player, was upset publicly that his son, J.C. Horn, didn't really get any press when he was drafted because the coverage went to Aaron Rodgers instead of the kid getting drafted in the moment. And it just took over day one. And to your point, and I know that the Packers aren't here to draft according to what Aaron wants. Clearly, we've seen that over the last decade. But to go Eric Stokes instead of a high-profile wide receiver, they filled the center position, which is great with Lindsey leaving, and Amari Rodgers, who I think will be fine from Clemson. But they didn't do Aaron any favors in the draft either, whether he's coming back or not. So clearly it's a divided ship. But then, of course, after the fact, everybody comes out, head coach, GM, everyone comes out saying, hey, we just need to get on the same page. It's all good. We'll figure it out, blah, blah, blah. Question to you, Ryan. We did two questions, I guess. What would it actually take in a fantastical scenario? What would it actually take to get Aaron Rodgers out of Green Bay? We saw the Bears reportedly were set to give up 3 first-round picks and players and second-round picks for Russell Wilson. Didn't happen. What would it take for Aaron Rodgers? And then second question, do you think that Aaron Rodgers, and I guess you mentioned this a little bit, has the conviction internally to actually give it up if they're not willing to play ball with him and turn away that money and just say, you know what, guys, I've done what I can for the franchise. I'm not happy anymore. I want to go somewhere else and look at better horizons, whatever, to get out of here. So what would it take to get Aaron Rodgers out of Green Bay? And do you think ultimately he would actually hang it up if they don't play ball?
Ultimately, I think he would. I think he feels after a third MVP, he's got a Super Bowl. You know, that for me is, enough. Is it enough for him? I think so. I think legacy wise, I think he can walk away as, because I think the storyline with him is that the franchise he was with let him down. The storyline is that he didn't win more Super Bowls. I think the storyline is that the franchise that he was there and gave everything to really let him down in terms of getting to that place. I know some have talked about his inability to win the big game, talking about NFC championships, because they only got to one, right? They only got to one Super Bowl. But I think the storyline has been that this organization has really let him down, and it continues. They went and drafted. The only time they've ever drafted anybody in the first round on offense came 2 years ago when they drafted Jordan Love. Okay, so my bigger question is too: if they trade, what's the value out there? It's got to be multiple first round picks. I would say 3 or 4. Also, there's got to be a player out there in terms of trade value that's equivalent in Green Bay's eyes. Like, either they believe. I mean, can you believe Jordan Love's the guy when he hasn't, dressed up or taken a snap for this Green Bay team other than in practice as a scout team quarterback? Never dressed for a game last year. There was no preseason games. We have no idea what Jordan Love looks like in a professional uniform. So I would suspect you would need. That's why the San Francisco 49er one looked so attractive, because you can get a bunch of picks. You get the 3rd overall pick. You could also go and get Jimmy Garoppolo in a trade, and who would be a filler there, a guy who's gone to a Super Bowl and played, gone to as many Super Bowls and played as Aaron Rodgers has. So there's a ton, and I don't know if there's a team out there. And also, if they are that team, if Aaron Rodgers looks at it and goes, yeah, that's got the components to win a Super Bowl. I mean, the best components for him to win a Super Bowl and get back to the Super Bowl are there in Green Bay. Back-to-back NFC championships. This team didn't lose much, right? And they lost to a team that just got on an incredible hot streak in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers down the stretch. So
I mean, it just depends on how we want to evaluate his FU attitude, right? Because he has had this FU attitude whenever he's felt like he's been wrong, going back to the draft when he was, when he was slept on, quote unquote, and how he was treated behind Favre and all that stuff. He's pretty typically followed through on how he said based on how he's felt on the situation. So yes, there's $35 million on the table. Yes, there's pressure from his agents and other endorsements and all this stuff. But the dude also, I think that he stuck by how he's felt and the decisions that he's made based on how he's felt in his situation more than anything else. And so if he truly is just unhappy in Green Bay, I don't think anything else matters. I just don't. And I think Green Bay knows that. So if he sticks by his FU attitude the way that we've seen in history repeats itself here with him, I think that he's gone no matter. I don't think it matters. I just think he's gone. I think he'll leave it out there.
Yeah, I mean, he sticks to his laurels. Having spent so much time with him over the last 3 years when things have been difficult, and I know what it feels like to not achieve everything you want to achieve at that level. And I do believe he wants another Super Bowl. Big reason why. It just takes him one notch above Brett. And that's the guy he's always kind of been chasing and having to live up to in the line, and just all of that. Brett played in 3 Super Bowl, or played in Brett's got the two. Brett's got the 1 Super Bowl win and played in 2 Super Bowls, right? So I think that's just a little. That would just give him that little, on the reunions, just be like, look at Brett and go, yeah.
And he wants to do it as a Packer then, probably, right? Because if he went off and did it somewhere else, it wouldn't be as meaningful.
And I just don't think there's a place where he could go do it. There's not a landing spot that exists like there was last year with Tampa Bay, where this team was perfectly set up. All you needed the guy that wouldn't turn it over a ton and could really bring in that leadership. Jameis Winston wasn't up to the task, but the team in place, the way they drafted, the way they put together a team, they just needed a couple pieces, a winning piece And so I don't know. I don't think there's a team out there that exists. The two teams
You
that
don't
we're
think
talking
New
about.
Orleans, if Rodgers was able to land in New Orleans, that would be an opportunity for them? Because I feel like they could contend with him at quarterback.
I don't. Their cap is so screwed. They are.
Yeah.
It's just it's not a possibility. But and I also don't think it is. I really don't. I think that I think they lost a lot on defense in terms of because of that cap. They drafted defensively. Sean Payton, for whatever reason, it just feels kind of like the winningest regular season team, but just haven't been able to get over in the playoffs.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. But you're right. That's I had not thought about that. There's a good option, but like I said, there's no way that I don't think they can make it happen. So
Ryan, if you're Kyle Shanahan, you make that phone call to Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur basically told Kyle to kick rocks. It wasn't going to happen, so they hung up the phone. If you're Kyle Shanahan and Matt LaFleur says, "Hey, we'll listen to an offer," if you're Kyle Shanahan, do you actually go after Aaron Rodgers, which means giving up the third pick at least, and something else, or do you stick with future instead of 2-year option? Maybe go with Trey Lance, your guy. Like if you're in that moment, what do you do?
You know what you have. You know what you have in Aaron Rodgers. You have no idea what you have in Trey Lance. Zero. You think you do, but you know what you have in Aaron Rodgers because you have evidence. 16 years of evidence. So yes, you move heaven and earth if that's an option because San Francisco is ready to win right now. They proved it 2 years ago. They were an overthrow away from being Super Bowl champions. Yeah. And if he felt like Jimmy Garoppolo isn't the guy, because clearly they've said he's not healthy enough. He doesn't stay healthy enough for us to know he's going to be available at all times. They had to go out and move heaven and earth to get to 3 to get a quarterback. But that's the thing when it comes to quarterbacks, and that's why Chicago was willing to throw everything into the bucket for Russell Wilson. You know what you have. You don't know what your first round pick's going to do. I don't care how much due diligence you've done. You have zero idea what Trey Lance is going to be. You believe you do, but you don't know. You know what you're going to get with Aaron Rodgers, and you're going to get MVP caliber football play at the quarterback position, period. So, yeah, you make that work, and that's why Kyle called. That's why he called. Why not? Like, hey, how much of this is true? Would we have a chance? And LaFleur was just like, hey, you're wasting your time. You don't have enough. And he's the reigning MVP. He's our guy. I'm going into my third year. You think I'm ready to implode my career in year 3 after what I've done in the first 2 years? Hell no, Kyle. Stop calling me. Go have yourself an athletic brew. And that's what we did this weekend. We went out and watched the draft and celebrated. Popped open some athletic brews, brewed without compromise, non-alcoholic brewed beer. This is Upside Dawn, little light beer. And it's important, right? I went on a little vacation this weekend. You go to these resorts and you go to these bars and bar and grills and you ask for a non-alcoholic beverage, and 9 times out of 10 they don't carry it. So I brought a 6-pack of athletic brew with me, so I could sit around and if anything, it just feels like a relaxation. You taste the great taste and less filling part of them. Go to athleticbrew.com. Your first order of 2 6-packs get 10% off by going through our link here on the page. That's again is Athletic Brew, athleticbrew.com. Celebrate with me without all the consequences. All right. Getting back to the NFL draft, winners, losers. I thought, I focus mostly on the Pac-12. I cover that with the Pac-12 network. Of course, it's branched out more because of working with NFL radio and this show, of course. But the idea of draft grades, it's a bit asinine, and winners and losers, of course, because we have no idea until they go out and play, like what that's going to look like. Like I thought Jacob Eason as a draft pick in the 3rd round for the Indianapolis Colts last year was huge. That was great value. Well, no preseason. He spends the entire year as the scout team quarterback. The development doesn't really happen there. Clearly not enough for the Indianapolis Colts not to move, not to go and figure out a trade for Carson Wentz. And then they go and draft Sam Ehlinger out of Texas in the 4th round, I believe it was. or 6th. I can't remember which round it was in, but clearly they didn't get to see enough. So you don't know until time passes. The thing about the NFL and the NBA, like we talked about a little bit earlier, there's instant impact by some of these players. So then you can kind of walk away from it and go, oh, that was an impactful draft. Joe Burrow to Cincinnati, that was super impactful. Trevor Lawrence, those are ones you can really quantify. But it's hard to pick winners or losers. I do know that the Detroit Lions were very infatuated with the Pac-12. They picked, out of their draft picks, 4 Pac-12 players. They went with, let me go through here. They went with Penei Sewell. By the way, if I could give them a virtual high five, they did. I mean, did you see the reaction of their general manager and everybody when Penei fell to them? Because they honestly couldn't believe that was going to happen.
Yeah, it's perfect.
When you host the Rich Eisen show, I host the RDL show, the viewership is just a little bit bigger than our little grassroots show. So
for now,
when I say the same things I say on this show, on a bigger platform show, people get really upset, and people are really invested in their teams, right? So on Friday when I hosted the Rich Eisen show, I got after 5 teams. Who do you think I got after? I got after Cincinnati. Dolphins. Because they took Jamar Chase rather than Penei Sewell. Got after the Dolphins at 6 because I'm like, why take a receiver so high? Move back, you can still get it. And then I really got after the Philadelphia Eagles, who started at 6, moved to 12, then moved up to 10 to take a wide receiver in Devontae Smith. And then, of course, I got after my Pittsburgh Steelers fans. I'm right there with you, Steelers. I'm a diehard Steelers fan. And then Jacksonville for taking running backs in the first round. But the thing is, I'm not attacking these people personally, but they are so invested in their teams that their responses back to me are incredibly personal. Incredibly personal. They want to rip my heart out, personal type of things is how they attack it. When I'm just saying, hey, Cincinnati, bonehead move. Protect your quarterback. You don't need a freaking Ferrari out in the driveway when, the guy protecting it and throwing the football around, isn't going to be getting the ball. So that was a big deal. But when the Detroit Lions figured out that they were going to get Penei Sewell, the ecstatic nature of the video we saw of their general manager in their front office says a lot, because I think this young man is a once in a generation type of offensive lineman in the mold of Jonathan Ogden, guys that will be established. Andrew Whitworth with an organization forever, a leader, all of that. I really do. And I think that, unfortunately, Cincinnati has got a really pretty offensive skill position room. And that's about it. Not one that's going to translate into wins for them, because their star quarterback's going to be on his ass most of the time.
Yeah,
I'm bringing up Cincinnati's draft here because I know they did go.
I have it ready to go too. So they got
Same.
Chase,
go ahead.
Carmen in the second. They thought they got their tackle in the fourth with their second pick in the second round. But
they went with Clemson. They went with the Gentle Giant.
Yeah, Jackson Carmen.
Yeah, and he's a good one. Don't get me wrong. He's a good one.
Penei Sewell.
He's not Penei Sewell. I'm sorry. And I talked to offensive line coaches, and they rallied around hey, I'd rather have 5 mediocre guys that work well together than just a stud. And so I get that. But then I also asked him, okay, so here's your option though. You can have Penei Sewell, or you can have, these guys, and you're picking there.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, I get it. Yeah, I take him because he's the best in the business at what he's about to do. And so, but some teams were upset. Philadelphia Eagles, Philly fans hold nothing back in terms of that.
How do we know that when teams draft teammates, right? How do we know that the teammates actually like each other? We just assume, right? The fans are like, "Oh, Etienne's going to Jacksonville. He's going to be." What if Lawrence and Etienne hate each other, right? We just assume that it's this amazing relationship, but it may not be. They're not going to come out and say. Of course, they're going to be tweeting at each other and being like, "Yeah, hooking up back with your boy. We're coming." Of course they are, but that may not be the reality.
True, really true. I mean, there weren't there weren't many. I can't think of one player on my Rose Bowl team before I went pro that I wouldn't have loved to have had on my team. So that is actually. I mean, you can have that thought, but there was not a player that played with me in '97 on that Rose Bowl team that I wouldn't have welcomed with open arms to San Diego with me as a teammate. I would have just been ecstatic. Also, it would have given me somebody to, when a lot of expectation were there, that I could hold on to, that I really could hold on to. That was special. That was, that somebody to go to when I was struggling in the locker room. I didn't have anybody like that. And unfortunately, there was a couple of Washington guys that were in that locker room that when I was in San Diego, that when I was struggling with stuff, that continued to be assholes, like most Huskies. So it didn't help that at all. Just that commonality when Trevor's going through a hard time, and he can go over and sit with Travis and just kind of, because they've grown up together and they've dealt with a lot of stuff together. They've had some tough losses, right? The loss to the national championship to LSU, the loss this year in the national semifinal, Ohio State. Those types of things, right? They're few and far between, and they can.
Let me ask you something then. If Jacksonville, let's say that's the case, then you're knocking Jacksonville over picking ETN in the late first round, right? What if that's why they picked him, right? Do you think that doesn't supersede team needs at that point?
Yeah, you can get a Clemson therapist for Trevor Lawrence, right? Okay. You don't waste your second first round pick there. They got a great one in Walker Little in the second round though. Yeah. So it's I continue to say that it's a waste of your first round pick, because you could have gone Devontae Williams in the second round, right? And you could have got a better offensive lineman maybe than Walker Little, because Walker Little's still a bit of a question mark. Dude hasn't played in 2 years, played 72 snaps, got hurt, COVID hit, opted out the entire season. Really hasn't played for 2 years. So you're betting on his development and growth and ceiling. And so, that's, you take the best player you can at that point. When it comes to, I'm not a proponent of like, well, Travis Etienne was the best player on our board at that time. That's lazy. That's a lazy reason why, and an excuse, I think. So, some of the later round picks that I really liked. I like Paulson Adebo to the New Orleans Saints. He is a first round talent that I think slipped away. He's out of Stanford. He fell to the New Orleans Saints at 76. I like that one. Elijah Molden to the Tennessee Titans out of University of Washington. Really like that one. Alex Molden, his dad played professionally. I think he was what may have been the first player to pick me off in college for the Oregon Ducks back in the day. Amon-Ra St. Brown to the Detroit Lions. Really like that. Went a lot higher than I expected. He is a physical wide receiver. He went 112th. I really thought he was going to be a second day guy. I really did. So Cam Bynum out of Cal to the Minnesota Vikings. He's going to learn under Patrick Peterson, under Mike Zimmer, who's a defensive genius. Love that one. These are all, we're talking about Pac-12 guys, because that's my world. The 4 Oregon defensive backs, right? We're talking about
Brady Breeze, the Amador Lenore.
Talking about Brady Breeze, Javon Holland, and Thomas Graham Jr. Yeah. All 4 of them got drafted. All 4 of them. That says a lot about that defensive backfield at Oregon 2 years ago. That's pretty cool. And then Demetric Felton out of UCLA went way higher than I expected. I saw a lot of, there was a comparison made by some broadcaster around Alvin Kamara. I thought it was a little hyperbolic, but I was like, that can work. And then I think Baker Mayfield, when he found out who this guy was, because he probably didn't know who he was until after the draft, and he was like, oh my God, how'd this guy fall to us at this place? This guy's going to be a game changer for me. He's going to be able to do things out of the backfield that are special. That, I think, just Cleveland Browns had a very, very good draft. And then Jamar Jefferson, who I thought was probably arguably the best running back in the Pac-12 conference over the last 3 years. Freshman of the year at Oregon State. Didn't run a really good 40, was a little undersized at 208 pounds. He falls all the way to pick number 257, the last Pac-12 player picked, to the Detroit Lions. I thought that was a steal for them. Really excited for for that organization and these Pac-12 players. That's just there's 28 players out of the Pac-12 drafted, 4 to the Detroit Lions. I think 5 players from Stanford, 5 from USC. Talk to our friend Eric Edom on my Pac-12 Sirius XM show this morning. Eric will be joining us on Wednesday to recap everything in the draft. This guy spends his entire offseason digging into the draft. Made a little joke today. He asked us if we wanted to hear his 2022 mock draft yet, and I gently told him, please go away. He'll be joining us Wednesday. He'll be joining us Wednesday to talk about all things draft. So there we go. And when he does join the show, we'll ask him if he's ever tried Bomb Banana hot sauce. Have you guys? You should try it soon. Bomb Banana, seekthespice.com. Mild or a little more spicy, muy, muy. All right. This was started by a couple college buddies in their dorm rooms at the University of Michigan. Unfortunately, go blue. It's banana based, not banana flavored. I think that's a huge selling point. A lot of people are like, "Can you make hot sauce out of bananas?" It's so good. It goes on a lot of my food. Go to seekthespice.com. Like I said, that's seekthespice.com, all one word, and use the promo code for 10% off. LEAF. LEAF, like on a tree, or my last name, however you wish to look at that, at checkout. But a Bomb Banana hot sauce, absolutely fantastic. Beyond excited to be working with this new and up-and-coming company. Try it out, everybody. All righty. So we've talked about all those things. I just noticed something that a friend of mine passed along to me. And when I was hosting Eyes in the last time, we had some NBA guys on because it was right around the trade deadline. And I asked the question to James Worthy about what happens, when the LA Lakers keep dropping and dropping and dropping because they can't win games. They are in the 7th spot right now. Now, if they have to go into a situation where they have to do the play-in games, right? We're talking about one game. Any team can lose one game. And the Lakers could be on the outside looking in, where the Knicks, on the other hand, 9-1 in the last 10 games, are 4th in the East. So this playoff picture is starting to look, right now, if the playoffs started today, the Lakers would take on the Utah Jazz at number 2. And I think that is a incredible tough ask. Now, well,
they would technically actually play in the playing game versus the Spurs first.
Without the playing game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they would no,
they would play the Nuggets. They would play the Nuggets. They would play the 3 and the 6.
Where's Utah? Is Utah at 1?
Utah is at 2. Phoenix is at 1 technically. They own the tiebreaker between those two teams.
Okay, so they would play Utah, right?
No, they wouldn't. Lakers are 1. Phoenix is 1. Utah's 2. Denver's 3. If the 3 plays the 6.
The Lakers, the one I saw is the Lakers are 7th right now.
The current standing, based on the Lakers, have the same win percentage as Dallas, so they're tied for 6th with Dallas, 5th with Dallas technically.
Okay, what I saw was that they were 7th, and the Knicks were 4th. So that's what I'm going off of.
The Knicks are currently 4th. That is correct.
Okay, well, at least I get half the shit right when I do my show. That's the thing that worried Big Game James. He was like, if it gets to a place where it's just a one-game play-in, I said, well, how would you view this season without any AD, without any LeBron for most of the year, and after winning a championship the year before, how would the bounce back? It's like, it would be incredibly disappointing. Every year that they have LeBron James and they don't win championships is going to be considered extremely disappointing. Your guys' thoughts?
I mean, I agree, but I also I'm saddened by the fact that the storylines surrounding as we hit the back 9 here of the NBA, we're really in like the last full week of games. It saddens me that this is the dominating storyline, because the truth is, with this NBA season, like, the story of the NBA season to this point has been Phoenix, and then the Knicks, and then the Wizards run right now, and then Steph.
How much influence has DeAndre Ayton had this year? 0?
10%. Chris Paul has 95% of all equity in that, like, decision making in that offense. DeAndre Ayton is as a contributor. DeAndre Ayton is the biggest, like, piece that nobody talks about.
Yeah, because he was the number 1 overall pick, if you guys remember.
Yep.
Just 3 years ago.
And then he was suspended 35 games for PEDs. But the truth is is that DeAndre Ayton is playing phenomenal, and his plus minus is off the charts. He's a great defensive piece, and they run the offense through him. When Booker's hitting threes, when they bridges Chris Paul and Booker on the perimeter, they run the offense through and they get the defense in. They have shooters all over the place. It's phenomenal offense. And Monty Williams, who's going to win Coach of the Year, who's one of my favorite coaches. I mean, that Phoenix Suns should be the story. It sucks that LeBron James hates that there's a play-in tournament. It sucks that the Lakers are are playing to the detriment of two big injuries. But welcome to the NBA. This is what happens, and it sucks that the storylines are dominated by that when there are awesome stories going all around the NBA in other spheres that we should be talking about right now, at least in my opinion.
Well, it will make for a very interesting down the stretch they come. Speaking of which, Kentucky Derby kind of overshadowed, because of the NFL draft. But the Run for the Roses, one of the funnest things that I love to watch. The best 2.5 minutes in sports, they say, ran on Saturday, and Bobby Baffert, 6-time winning trainer of the Kentucky Derby, had a horse entered and wasn't getting too much consideration. The couple favorites had some bad postings. One got the rail. The other one was more on the outside. And Bobby Boy's Medina Spirit was right down the middle and got out to an early lead. And when it came down the stretch and I saw him go into the whip early, I said, that horse is going to get caught. There are some monsters out there on the outside. They're going to run him down. But they didn't. He just kept it up, and no matter what, kept a half a body lead all the way through the finish. And as a 12-1 underdog, your boy here got his friend who was at the Derby to put a little Hunsky down on him. I cashed in a cool $1,200 winner there on that bet. I mean, how could you? If anybody, I cannot believe people didn't bet that down. How does a Bob Baffert horse go to the polls at 12-1 odds in the Kentucky Derby with last year's winning Kentucky Derby jockey on his back?
Why was it so low?
I don't know. People didn't bet the three favorites were. I mean, it's a 19 horse field. It was initially a 20 horse field. So, it was fun. I'm going to have to go at some point. I owned racehorses. We had a filly that I thought could run in the Oaks at some point. So I thought I would do it then. I would take my filly to the Kentucky Oaks, run her in that. It's the race day before the Kentucky Derby, and then of course stay through in the Derby. But it's something now on the bucket list that I'm going to do, just to wear the funky hat. I think I just want to wear the funky hat.
You got to hit the Triple Crown races. I was hearing too, tuning in, running on the outside. The horses on the outside are generally not favored, and they're not at a favorable place to win. Brian, do you know anything about that? Getting a middle.
Well, it's just
slot
like it's like anything. It's like anything. Like you watch track, runners on the outside are staggered because of the distance. You have to close distance in a hurry because it's an oval, right? So the guys on the outside have to run much further than the guys on the inside. But you don't want to be too close to the inside the post because you get on the rail, because you get shoved down into the rail and you get caught back and behind. So you like middle starting points. And that's where Medina Spirit was. A couple of the favorites, like I said, were on the outside. You can close that gap pretty quick. If you get out of the gate quick, you just have to – it can take a lot of effort out of your horse from the beginning. You usually don't see wire-to-wire winners at the Kentucky Derby because the length is so long. It takes a lot to lead a bunch of horses. But for the longest time, it did not look like he was holding them back at all. Like he was holding him back a ton. And so that made me think positive that he was coming down the stretch. I'm like, okay, maybe he's got the stamina, because he didn't use a lot of that horse's endurance early on. And sure enough, boom, he just held it throughout. And I was just starting my NFL radio post-draft show, and my co-host could hear me go. I was watching on TV as we were doing it. So the draft wasn't that important in that moment for me. All right, let's get back to the question of the day, have some interaction with some of our viewers and listeners. Question of the day, of course: will Aaron Rodgers play for the Green Bay Packers in 2021? What are some of our best interactions today, Mr. Guasco?
Yeah, so far, basically, it's people are, well, let's see. I think he could turn down the money, and this is relative here to Andrew Luck giving up his money. Andrew Luck's situation was completely different.
He
It
got a
was,
medical retirement, right? So he actually got compensated.
I
It was the
believe
whole
so.
Julian Edelman thing.
I believe so, and it was
Yeah.
also injury based. Aaron Rodgers,
Right.
thankfully, as of now, has nothing to do with injuries. It's being unhappy with the franchise there. So most of it, I mean, most people say that they don't think he will leave. Um,
Bill Powell thinks he's going to be gone based on history.
Based on history, yeah. I mean, first of all, I've been seeing this go around for a weekend. To say that to bring this up is ridiculous. First of all, to have any quarterback play 16 years is amazing. To have three of them in the same franchise do it is absolutely incredible as well. So for them to base Rodgers' move on that is silly, but I hear you there. Let's see here. Scrolling through, we have a lot today. A lot of interaction. We appreciate you all tuning in
Yeah,
here.
Russell Cohen was spamming it for a sec. Can somebody give me clarity on this? Did you guys pay attention to Jeopardy? Because apparently I quoted a Jeopardy answer for Aaron Rodgers that I have no. So Jason told me that apparently one of the contestants on Jeopardy wrote that the final answer for Rodgers was the New Orleans Saints, where he was going to end up. I had no idea. So when I brought that up, apparently I was plagiarizing a Jeopardy answer.
So one of the answers was the New Orleans Saints, and the question that a contestant wrote down is like where you will end up in 2022.
It was something along those lines.
Ryan, here's a question here. Beyond football, is there any concern over Rodgers' personality? Seems like a bit of an odd guy when it comes to relationships with teammates, family, etc. That's a risk with teammates as well.
That is absolutely one of the most false equivalencies of his relationships on the football team. He is the most beloved individual in that locker room. You've seen the ones that have complained about him post career have been receivers, James Jones, those guys. Greg Jennings. They've had some, mostly because they got shepherded off before their careers were ready to go.
But he put both of them on the map. Just throwing that
exactly.
out there. I mean,
exactly. So
they're good players, but they're not.
He's got great relationships in that locker room. I'm biased too. I mean, I just haven't spent time with him. We play golf, in the off season. He lives here in Los Angeles, so
he goes to Torrey Pines up the street.
So we spent some quality time together. Around the time MacGyver was born, he was over at the house. So I don't find a dislikable bone in his body, and I understand from the quarterback perspective, like, help me out here. I'm trying to win a championship for this organization, and you're doing me nothing. And you're like, well, clearly you can do whatever you need, because I give you crap, and you make steak dinners out of it. And he's like, this is hard. Give me just give me a couple better ingredients. I just need one. Just give me one. Maybe that gets us over the top. I don't know. But that's the show, boys.
Is
another great show.
Dead really quickly, Ryan? Rodgers to Denver's dead at this point, right?
Yeah, okay. I think it's dead. And that maybe, but I think it's pretty much dead. We'll be back on Wednesday. Like I said, Eric Edholm from Yahoo Sports is going to join us, talk all things draft. This is all he does with his life once the season ends. Till then, he is locked in. He's going to have a good idea of how your team did in this year's NFL draft. Again, thanks for joining us from Jonathan and Sky and Charlie out there in the universe somewhere. We'll see you on Wednesday. Keep watching the RDL show here on YouTube. Thanks.